Oh, I get the grandson, I guess. What do you mean you can't tell me right now? Is that a secret? Oh, Tyler, we're still... Yes! Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we'll be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing The Haar by David Sodergren. Mariah and I have adopted a Palestinian family that is currently still stuck in Gaza. Muhammad's neighborhood was bombed and killed 22 members of his family, leaving him responsible for his 4 younger siblings who were pulled from the rubble. We have their family's GoFundMe linked in the description, and they are very close to their goal, so please donate below. Don't forget there's a link below to sign up for our free newsletter, and you can get more information about us and the podcast. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LidLibPodcast. I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXDXN on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
Why did you put a picture of the dog?
Because his dog, his whole Instagram is just his dog and his books. Like how I imagine you would advertise any book that you write with Kaz. The whole thing is
I
just
would
his
not.
little like geriatric pug with his little tongue sticking out and his
Okay.
books, and it's so sweet.
Moving on. We're reading The Haar. We read The Haar by Mr. David Sodergren. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, dude. Mariah did all the research for this guy and this book.
We'll see. We'll see how far I got. I thought I did most of it. I actually finished it after I had finished the book, but we were under the weather, so we are a little bit late in filming this.
Yes.
Later than we usually are. Usually we try to finish the book and then film it so our thoughts are nice and fresh, emotions are high. But when the plague strikes,
It's
and
been
not
about,
COVID, I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's been almost a week for me since I finished this. Yeah, it'll be a week tomorrow since I finished it.
So, David Sodergren is an indie author, all self-published. So, a lot of his books don't get a ton of reviews from what I've noticed. I think The Haar is one of the lesser reviews. I think The Forgotten Island was one that had more reviews. So, I think he's going to end up picking up because a lot of like bigger horror book talkers are picking up on his writing and his books, which is really cool. So, this book in particular got 8.4K reviews on Goodreads with an average of 4.6 stars,
This
which is
is
pretty
actually his
solid.
biggest book on Goodreads.
Is it?
Yeah.
I couldn't
Forgotten
remember if it
Island
was
has
this one or if it was the
2,000.
other one.
Yeah, it's this one. If you click on the author's name from a book, it tells you their topmost. Like at the very top, it puts their most.
See, I thought it just threw at random.
Nope.
I didn't know it was organized by mode. David Sodergren lives lives in Scotland with his wife Heather and his best friend Boris the pug, which I included in here so that Chris can see this little pug. I don't think the pug has teeth because his little tongue just sticks out, and he's always reading the books that David writes, and I think it's really darling. David Sodergren writes a variety of books. He kind of has this theme of being like an 80s horror, very gory kind of body horror, but relatively progressive throughout the books that I have read so far, which has been really refreshing. So it's described in his bio as being gore-soaked folk horror.
Would these be considered splatterpunk novels? Or at least like The Haar?
I think it could.
Okay.
I mean,
I don't
I
know
don't know.
much about
Maybe
like
I'm
the
just too
subgenres of horror.
desensitized. I don't know because like some of his books are like they're violent and they're gory, but is it splatterpunk? Because some of the other stuff that I have read, I guess I would say yes. It's at least extreme horror. Whether or not it's splatterpunk is, I guess, up for interpretation. But I would definitely categorize these as more extreme horror because of how descriptive some of the scenes are. Definitely not something if you are interested in horror novels and maybe not the gore, don't pick these up. But I didn't see anything politically or controversial about this author.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice.
I would say for like his politics, at least this book does critique capitalism in some senses. but I don't think it's necessarily like it's not giving pro socialism or pro communism in any ways. It just is critiquing capitalism at a very surface level.
It
This
kind of
novel is
reminds me because, like, he does live in Scotland, so his
like the
viewpoint
Nordic
on, like, American politics and stuff, like, he is in one of those countries that has had,
free
like,
healthcare.
um well, not just, like, the free healthcare, but, like, the effects of British colonialism historically on that country and
Well, because it's like
Ireland.
Scotland and Ireland, yeah.
Mm. So they have felt the effects of this. So I imagine that's why, because I did see in some of the reviews for the Haar specifically, people are just like, "Oh my God, just say you hate America already." It's like, I mean,
Yeah. Who can blame them?
so that was funny. Some of the we'll get into the criticisms later, but that's just like the general vibe of the politics. There is queer characters in every book that I've read, which has been really nice.
Is there queer
Positive queer
ones in this one?
representation. Yeah,
Who?
I can't tell you right now.
You can't tell me right now. Oh, I get the grandson, I guess. What do you mean you can't tell me right now? Is that a secret? Oh, Tyler, we're still. Yes.
Oh, just like there. So in some of the books, the queer characters I have read one where it is a main character, sometimes it's background characters, but it's just
I was
it's
just asking
nice.
about this
I'll
book
say that.
specifically. And you're like, I can't tell you
Oh,
right
if you're
now.
gonna, I forget you can just edit it out. It's not a live stream. It's just the grandson at the end was a surprise. It was
Yeah.
nice. It was a nice little surprise. It was just like, okay,
Surprise.
slay, Granny, love that.
Okay. Are all of his
She's
books
very
on
sweet.
KU too?
Most of the ones that I have seen are on KU. The ones
So at
I try to
least
have access to are on KU.
so they're
So
very accessible reads. Are you gonna get a physical copy of this or no?
I might for Night Shoot. I don't know if I would go in for this
Okay.
because I really liked Night Shoot.
More
But
than
this
the
one,
Har.
like, it's charming, but I think
Okay.
the Night Shoot's a little bit more flushed out and it's more of a cohesive story. And I just like the ending of it a little bit more than this. This
I
was
need to
nice. I like the politics
see.
of this. So for those that don't know what this book is about, because I didn't know what it's about this little old woman named Muriel that lives in a little Scottish fishing village. She's lived there her whole life, born there, intended to die there, but then American capitalists come in. They want to completely decimate the whole village so that they can put in a golf course. And if this sounds familiar, well, it's because it really did happen. But then something comes out of the sea and things get a little sticky. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I think there's just like a creature. This is like the Blob meets Little Shop of Horrors type of book.
I never
That's what I got.
finished
Also
Little
kind of
Shop
like
of
The Thing.
Horrors.
You never watched like the movie
I watched part of it,
musical?
but then I got bored.
I love that growing up. It was like one of my favorite musicals. Shaking my head. Fake theater kid.
It was fine. I mean, I prefer other musicals than, especially the guy whoever plays it's like the main dude. I can't think of him, but he's in a bunch of other stuff.
He's in like Honey I Shrunk the Kids and
Yeah. He like
Ghostbusters
pisses
and
me off. Like his face.
okay, I can understand that.
Like it's just like it's just like he's got a punchable face. I don't remember what his name is in Little Shop of Horrors. It's like something stupid.
I don't know. I don't want to get
Whatever. Moving on.
sidetracked.
Okay. It has 8K reviews with 4.16 stars. Did you already say that already?
I think so, but you know what? We both have brain fog, so this episode is just gonna
Yeah.
be. It's gonna be.
Well, we explained the general plot. Do you want to give our non-spoiler reviews?
So I think we should preface this by the types of books that we pick. For those that don't know, maybe you're just getting into this. I personally really enjoy horror novels. I tend to gravitate to them quite a lot. I enjoy that. I love horror movies. I love horror as a genre. It's great. I like campy horror. I like all horror. I'm just going to put that out. I also like short stories. I think
Okay.
this is important before we. Kristen, on the other hand, is my opposite.
I mean, I don't hate horror. I won't say that I hate horror at all. I prefer maybe something more thrilling that's more like you're scared where I feel like this is not something that has me very I don't think it's very scary. I'd rather be scared. I
Yeah, but if
like
you were gonna pick up, like, a horror novel, like, this is you would not pick, like, a monster book,
to be
I don't
scared.
think.
No, probably
I think
not.
you'd pick up something more, like, true crime adjacent.
Yes. Well, that's what I was saying. I prefer more thrillers and more like I don't know, commentary. Where I didn't hate this book, but I can appreciate it for what it was. Where I think maybe if it was 100 pages longer and the characters were more written out, and instead of a lot of the villains kind of gave like curly mustache, like twisting mustache villains that are just like they're developed and everyone is just so extremely evil without having like their motivations to really in this as much as I feel like I could have.
Okay. I see, I see. We'll
Because
get
I
into
think
it once we get into the
yeah,
spoilers. I
like
liked it. I think I'd give it, like, a 4 star.
I gave it 3.25 stars. So I'm not saying I hate it. I just kind of
Which in
felt
the
like
realm
it
of
was
Kristen isn't horrible.
I think it's very middle of the road. But what I was just saying, I kind of prefer a more compelling villain where like I think the villain in this is kind of very one-dimensional and it's kind of more somebody you don't even get to see versus the books that I rate very highly is that even though people can be absolutely terrible people having no good in them, they're still compelling villains where you're like interested in what they have to say.
Can you give an example
The
of a very
Darkling,
compelling villain?
the Darkling,
Okay.
uh
I don't know why I asked.
I think even, like, Reginald is that his name in Babel? Like, the the dad in Babel, I think even though, like, obviously he was, like, a shitty white man, and you could tell from the beginning, he was still interesting to read about, and, like, interesting to see, like, how he pushed, Robin and everything like that, and how he worked at the school and stuff like that, or even in, trying to think of what other Notes on an Execution, Ansel. Very well-rounded character that, like, even though he's a terrible person and has nothing redeemable about him, he's still interesting to read about, and seeing his perspective was still interesting. And I feel like
That
even
way, just people who are listening can have an idea of, like, what you consider if this is the first time they're listening, and so they're not
yeah,
like, "Oh, what does this mean?" There's your frame of reference for
that
Kristen's
because I
really
do
high
think
standards.
because I do think that, like, those people, like, especially, like, Ansel and even Reginald, like, they almost have no, like, compelling like, they have nothing, like, that makes them that you can view them in a positive light at all, but I still enjoyed reading about them as villains because they weren't just twisting mustaches, being evil. They had true motivations and true reasons behind what they were doing that weren't just like, "I like money, ee."
See, but I think this is where you and I are different, is, like, I already know why they are, so they're not twisty mustache to me. It's like they're the
Well,
economic ruling class, they are a
yes.
placeholder. So I already have that foundation and understanding of, like, why they would do that and the horrors, like, why would anyone go do this, or why would they pay to have, like, any sort of violence happen to anybody, like, I get it because I already know.
Well,
You know
I
what
mean,
I
like,
mean?
I
Because
obviously
like, that
understand
is
that
rooted in
too.
reality.
Yes, I do, but I think that's what makes it not rooted in reality with this is because, like, even though, like, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are absolutely terrible people, they still have motivations that you're still like, I want to see their stupidity being acted out, like, on Twitter, seeing Elon Musk's, like, stupid tweets, and you're like, "Oh my god, he's just an idiot. That's why he acts like this." Versus even this guy, you don't even get to see him, like, have stupid tweets or anything like that. He's literally just, like, nothing. The, like, main capitalist
Yeah, because there
that's,
really isn't a lot of, like, differing point of views, really, you only get, like, one and then the occasional, like,
like,
brush
person
of
getting
it.
murdered.
Yeah, and we can get into the spoilers because I think this is where the
Yeah.
episode will come into full blossom as we
Debate.
dive into this. So if you don't if you aren't interested in that or if you haven't read it, maybe consider reading it because it is a short read. I think you can get through really quick. It's like
I
200
read it
pages or something.
fast.
Maybe 300? No, I think it's
No, it's
200.
like 206, I think.
Yeah, it's really short.
So,
So read it and come back.
yeah. But moving on, I guess, specifically to the spoilers, because I think that's my main critique, because I really did enjoy the politics, and I even liked, the character of, like, the Haar, where what did he w ended up getting named?
Avalon?
Avalon and, Muriel. Like, I liked their relationship, and I liked their dynamic. I thought that was very interesting, but the fact that the overarching villain was I can't even remember, the Philip or something?
Grant and Connor, I think, or Grant Industry, and then Connor was the
The
son.
son. Whereas just, like, the fact that, like, with that one scene where the Muriel is, like, walking to where Billy proposed to her or whatever, and then, like, the guy's there naked with the lady, and they're like, "Oh my god, beat that old lady up," and it's literally, like, completely unprompted. I was just like, "What am I reading?" Like, this is just, like it felt like just, like, angry person for the sake of an angry person, where there was not even any characterization to, like, where she could have said something that, like, pissed him off or something like that, really.
Yeah, because I think the author's intention was to show his entitlement to the whole situation and how much of, like, a privileged little shit he is,
But he didn't even,
but
like,
you
get
don't
that.
really get that, so it kind of is out of pocket, like, it
It was
just
literally
happened, you're
just
like, "What the
like
fuck?"
I was just like, I don't even care, like, yeah, like, I see Donald Trump Jr. on Don Jr. on fucking Fox News and how he, like, reacts, or even, like, just watching, like, the Charlie Kirk, like, debate or whatever that's been going around TikTok. Like, you see him, and you see him act stupid, and he acts entitled and stuff like that, and you can get that where it's, like, realistic because he's so stupid in the way that he acts and the way that he is. Versus in this, it was just like, "I'm just gonna beat this old lady up because she walked in on me having sex." Where it wasn't even like him being like, "Hey, like, you can't be here." Like, he doesn't even try to be civil. It's like maybe a sentence of being civil, which is, like, not realistic, I don't think. Where I do think maybe if this was a little bit of a longer book, you could have had more fleshed out villains, you know?
Yeah, I definitely see it for that, like, specific part. It was just kind of out of you're going through you're getting a lot of lore on Muriel, who she is as a person, her talking about how much she misses her husband and all of this, and the grief going to town council, talking about, like, what's happening to their town because of this golf course and whatnot. And then, like, it just happens, like, she's just having a sad little stroll on the beach, have some,
Yeah.
like, reminiscing. Um She just, like, gets beat up,
Yeah, by
and then
the
the Haar
girl
rolls
too,
in.
and even, like, the fact that it was both of them where it's just some random lady too that's, like, beat him up, or I feel like any, like, other person in general would just be like, "Oh my god, like, this is way extreme," or something, you know? Like, even if it was, like, a
Mm.
wealthy woman, I feel like women are a little bit different in that way, where I feel like I don't think it was, like, a very normal characterization.
I do think that's one of the scenes that kind of it could have just gotten cut, like, she coulda gone to, like, the cave or whatever and had her
Or
moment,
even just had,
had
like,
some flashbacks.
a police officer just being an asshole to her, like, "Hey, this is private property, get the fuck out," sort of thing, where it's like, those are,
Yeah.
like, the only people that I could understand them being, like, not having characterization because, like, they do support the, like, bourgeois and, like, you can tell that they only protect capital and stuff like that, which I do think was important to be shown, but then the issue is that, like, the way that, like, the overarching, like, capitalist guy or whatever and Connor, his son, where they're just, like they're so it's just, like, goofy, like, it just felt, like, too, like, extreme, where it's just, like, I've seen especially in, like, just watching The Substance, no spoilers, there's, like, a man in there that kind of is, like, obviously, like, a caricature of men and how they act, but it still felt more realistic, where this one just doesn't feel realistic to me, so I feel like it's not and, like, I understand it's, like, a horror novel where you get, like, a scary monster creature, it's not gonna be realistic, but I feel like the humans at least need to have some type of pool. Which I did like Avalon and Muriel's relationship, which is why I think
Yeah,
you
that was
liked it
very
so much.
unexpected. It's just like I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was just gonna be like this monster takes over the town type of book. I
Yeah,
knew very little growing in, aside from what Grapey said. This is another one of those books where like, okay, Grapey Del Taco said to read it,
yeah.
so I'll
Writing
read
it
it,
down,
okay.
yeah. And I mean, like, I do think, like, I did like especially reading the certain parts about, like, Muriel missing her husband and stuff like that, it made me think about, like, me and my partner, like, if he were to die and how sad I would be like just being on my own all the time. And like I can definitely like reminisce and like connect with those parts. It's just like whenever the characters are weak, I'm not as into a book
Yeah,
as.
she could have had a little bit more, and I do think if any of his books ever end up getting picked up for, like, trad publishing, and he
Mhm.
has to, like, rework them a little bit, I hope that he ends up building a little bit more, because I think, like, the campy aspects to the horror is just what makes his books, like, that's just his style of writing, is them kind of being campy, over the top, extreme, really gross. Like, that has to stay, but you still have to have good characters
Mhm.
that readers wanna care about. And
And I
Muriel
think
is, like, the only one, really, that you have any sort of connection to.
well, I mean, it makes sense because I mean, you are following her point of view um most of the time, so I mean, it makes sense to why like you're going to end up like caring more about her, but even like her friend Arthur and like whenever even like the scene with Arthur's house getting gasolined and then like set on fire and it's just like teenagers come and they literally just like they realize he's there and kill him. Like I don't think that's like very realistic for like teenagers to do either, where they're just like, "Oh, actually, I'm okay with murder for a lot of money." Where it feels like maybe if it was more like a contract killers that were like cheap contract killers, and then just like how they had, because he hired contract killers to come kill Muriel in the first place, where it's like maybe he tried like different contract killers and they just sucked, and that's why that happened. Versus,
Which I personally am not familiar with how, like, the gangs in Scotland or even in Europe
hmm
function as compared to, like, what we're used to in the United States. So this could be, like, a completely cultural thing that where we're kind of, like, separated and we don't get it because they could be violent like that and we just don't know it. But it was kind of like, I feel like they could have just been kids that were paid to catch a abandoned house on fire that they thought
yes,
was
that's
abandoned,
what they
right?
said
Man
it
gets stuck
was.
inside because he's hurt.
Yeah.
That I think that's how it should have gone,
But yeah, because
personally.
like but then they like go inside and they rob him and then like he pulls the knife on them obviously, but then they end up like stabbing him or whatever and knocking him over and then leaving. Where I feel like if it was like true teenagers that are just getting like paid off to burn an abandoned house, they'd be like, "Oh my god, like there's actually somebody in here." Like maybe they had already started the fire and then they realized he was in there too late. Where almost like I don't want to like spoil another book series, but reminiscence to a book series where there was like a hit and run where these teenagers were drunk driving and then they did like a hit and run and they left the scene, where I feel like that makes more sense for teenagers where they weren't intentionally trying to kill like the man that they hit and ran. I don't know if you know what book I'm talking about. Um well, I didn't want to say it cuz it's a spoiler.
Oh, we'll cut it out.
But
The power of editing.
you know what I'm saying? Like how like that where they actually had remorse and regret for what they did. Where I guess but then the only reason why, like, that was done was just so that, like, Avalon could eat that boy that killed Arthur.
But, you know, like, the kid could have, like, sprained his ankle or broke his ankle, and his friends could have abandoned him, and then he could have been, like, the ringleader and went in, try to get help, and, like, "Oh, maybe I can get, like, one up on this old lady or this house," and
Yeah.
I don't know, there's definitely, like, different ways that it could have gone down, where
Well, that's what I'm
it could
saying,
still
that's
be
the
violent. You could get the internal ideas of, like, this man who kind of loved Muriel, like, his best friend's wife, and wishes that he could have done something more, and he's still, like, robbed of that, but you also don't get a lot of build up around him either, so you're kinda just like, "Well, that's kinda sad."
yeah, where you're just like, "Okay," and I think, I think that, like, even with, like, Arthur's, like, being in love with, like, his best friend's wife or whatever, I feel like that's so, like, almost like a cliche too, that I feel like it could have been something more. Like, he could have been in love with Billy. And then that's why he
That would've been
bonded with
cool.
Muriel so much. Where I feel like
I
at
don't know
least
if it's
that's
just
almost like the
because,
same
like,
trope, but it's a little bit more outside of
a little
the stereotypical.
elevated,
Yeah.
a little,
A little
like,
that little
salt
spice.
daddy, like, um, let's see. Before we get into, like, the schmeat of the politics, I do wanna address the elephant of the room. This is just an out of pocket suggestion. Avalon, autistic. correct me if I'm wrong. This is
He's a
but like the
creature.
way he's a creature, but like the way he goes through in his desire to learn how to navigate a neurotypical world, right, of humans and understand languages and like sarcasm, like he just doesn't get the human experience, and it kind of
I wonder
feels
why.
when
I
you're
wonder why that is.
neurodivergent, or if you're not neurotypical and you're neurodivergent going through society. I thought that was funny. I was like,
I feel like
the
that's a
creature
little bit of
is.
a stretch.
I was like, is this literary fiction? Is this me? Am I the
Literary.
monster?
You're funny. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch because obviously it is. Do you think that about
Oh,
like
it's
your
not a stretch, it's
aliens
a
and
leap.
Ice Planet? Do you think like in Ice Planet Barbarians that like, oh, this alien is representing autism because he's not aware of human cultural norms?
No, because I think it's like a cultural difference. But this, he just like completely doesn't get the human experience, and he's
I
just like
wonder
going
why
for
that
fun.
is.
Like
It's
he's trying
almost
to
like he's
try out
never been around
humor.
humans his entire life.
Listen, just hear me out.
I'm not hearing you out because
I'm out.
that's stupid.
All right. Oh, we could get into some of the criticisms of this novel, which I
Besides
think
mine.
could, besides yours, besides like the stuff that we already like have, somebody said that the book started out badly, got worse. So these were all like 1 star. I think there maybe was a couple 2 star, but mostly 1 star reviews.
I mean, there's
So
not
many
very
points
many
I could
1-star
raise.
reviews on this.
Thank goodness. I'm happy I didn't have to like sift through a bunch of stuff. Somebody said it was like cliche, it was clunky, which I mean I can kind of see because it was kind of paced funny.
Yeah.
There was one that was really good. Oh, this one where it said, "It is too bad that the one interesting aspect of the story, the monster found in the fog by the old woman, was overshadowed by the inane nonsense." I think it meant to say insane nonsense of the rest of the story. "So sorry, but I can't really recommend this novel to any serious horror fan unless you're ready to suspend all your logic and enjoy bashing Americans." And I thought that was the funniest criticism.
I mean,
because it
bashing
reminded me of
Americans.
people were like
The
like
1-star reviews
critiquing
of
Babel
Babel.
because they're like, it's anti-white. Like if you just want to hear like a bunch of like white racism, like go read Babel. And I'm like, damn, like you really have no sense of like political literacy to think that this was just like nonsensical and that it wouldn't happen, especially since this was actually like rooted in something that actually happened.
Yeah, which I don't think we really talked about, like, the context of it with, like.
That's what I was hoping. This would segue into talking about like Trump International golf links in Scotland. Because I
Yeah.
did some digging today, right? As like they went there with the promise of, I'm sorry, Reaganomics, trickle down economics,
Oh my
promise of
god.
new jobs, some 1980s bullshit, right? But what ended up happening, right, was none of those things.
Yeah.
They
Well,
were
'cause
duped. They were scammed.
I mean, even Reaganomics, like, even by actual, like, economists talk about how, like, rich people don't actually create more jobs. They end up creating less and then destroying more jobs
Mm.
because surprise, surprise, once people have so much money to spend, they don't spend it all because it's literally like it reminds me of like that Bill Gates website. I don't know if you've seen it before where you can like go and like spend Bill Gates money and like you can buy like
Mhm.
100 yachts and it still doesn't even put a dent into like his bank account because like one, you're whenever you're rich, you're buying, I don't know, a couple nice houses maybe. You only need so many where you're eventually going to get to a point where you have all of your necessities and they just physically can't spend any more money. Because I know, like, there's, like, that big debate about, Bill Jeffrey Bezos got engaged or whatever to his new girlfriend, and he only spent $3 million on the ring or something, where it's like, how much more are you supposed to spend on a ring? The fact that he was able to find a ring and spend, like, $3 million on it or something, it's like, it's literally impossible for you to spend money at that rate.
What, you're telling me he didn't just buy her a whole like blood diamond mining operation?
Yeah.
That's not my man.
And I
Do
think
better, honey.
that's, like, the problem with, like, liberals, I think, a lot of the time And then even, like, some, like, conservatives and stuff like that where they're like, "Oh, like, they're stimulating the economy," where it's like, eventually, like, these people are getting so much money, they can't even spend it. Like, you can't even spend, like, that much money. Like, you literally cannot. It's actually crazy because it's like, once you buy so much stuff, the rest of the time, the money is just gonna keep sitting and growing into your account and not going anywhere. It doesn't like, think about it logically. Like, yes, they're spending a couple $1,000 more than maybe the average American does every year or whatever, but eventually it's just gonna get to a point where they're not spending it, it's not circulating in the economy because it physically can't, like, because it's not going to people that actually can use that money and spend it.
It's just, like, insane to think about it, like, and then they promise, like, specifically, like, this one, right? The instance that the story is based off is, like, they were promised all of these things, and I did find, like, a anecdotal story that kind of matches almost a one-to-one of what happened in this book, where
Oh, where
this
the monster came and started having sex with her?
yeah, fucking sick. I'm headed to Scotland.
I'm moving.
Anyways, um no, Michael and Sheila, they're in their 70s, right? Michael is a farmer and a fisherman, but apparently the Trump workers harass them regularly to sell the property to them for half the market value, right? And then apparently, this is all allegations, is that the
Allegedly.
workers sabotaged a water pipe that left his mom, his 92-year-old mother, without clean drinking water for 5 years.
You know what's crazy?
92.
Is the fact that this happens here in America too. If you look at places in Pennsylvania where they're fracking, these people where, there's a great documentary about this on YouTube for free if anybody wants to watch it. It's called Gaslands. I highly recommend it, where you can just learn about, like, the problems with fracking and what it does to the environment, and then not to mention it does to the people that live in these areas where these people don't get clean drinking water anymore, where they have to, like, boil their water to drink it. And this is happening, like, now in America too, where, like, they turn on their water and you can light a lighter next to it and the water catches on fire because there's so much, like,
Isn't that
natural gas that ends
insane?
up putting and that, like, happens now too.
It does. It, like, has historically happened.
Yeah.
Like,
Flint, Michigan.
via eminent domain laws where they can, like, forcibly have you moved if there's, like, if they want to build a highway or something, they can, like, force you to move. They've done this historically.
They
Hundreds
did
of
it in
thousands of people. It's
California recent
usually
like
marginalized people.
mhm.
Marginalized group, they'll give them 1 month to evict, move, find a new house. And especially if you're, like, somebody in the 1940s
Yeah,
and black communities trying to find a new place to go. And then now we have this layer of, like, fracking, which has really picked up in the last, like, what, 15 years?
yeah. Maybe
And it's
a little bit longer.
detrimental,
It's so bad for the
detrimental to
environment.
the environment. Horrible.
And the only reason why they use it is because it's supposedly better for the environment because it's not using coal. But the difference is because not to mention is that the way that they have to harvest it, do you know how they harvest natural gas?
No.
So they build
It's
these
in a, like,
big
a tube, they pump it, right?
they build this big ass tube thing and they shoot clean water, like fresh water into the ground and it like takes up like all like that surface area or whatever to shoot up the gas out of it. So it's literally not even only wasting like and like ruining the water around like it within the ground water in that area. It's also wasting fresh water by them using fresh water to mine it where we already have such limited freshwater sources here, which is we know like water is like a finite resource and it's already being wasted on something like this is crazy to me.
It's wild because this isn't just what happens here, right? Or in Scotland. This,
Mhm.
like, this
This is worldwide.
forcible, like, displeasure of individuals in the vein of helping the economic ruling class. We can look at, like, Jakarta, Indonesia, what happened on, like, the beaches of Bali, Operation Condor, La Valencia in Guatemala and Argentina, and how all of these, like, the military industrial complex works to displace and often, like, kill any sort of left-wing people. That's who they target first, right? And then they help prop up these pro-business military dictatorships, which allow the US to extract resources, create businesses in these countries, and then damage their waterways, damage their way of living. And just,
Mhm.
it's this really vicious, disgusting cycle. So when I see people in the comment sections or the reviews of these books, and they're like, this is just not even, like, this is just too violent. This would never happen. I was like, Do you know like, this like, the Trump International Golf Links had serious ecological, damages because their dunes, like, their sands were compared to, like, the rainforest because
Mm,
of, like, the type of wildlife that they
inhabited.
encompassed or had inhabited, sorry, um, and now it's not even considered, a natural, what did they call it? They're not, like, protected anymore, the Site of Special Scientific Interest, that's what it's called, an SSSI.
Wow.
It's gone. It's
Which
crazy, all because Trump wanted a
golf course.
golf course here, and
And not
it
to mention
flopped, and now it's gone.
how bad golf courses are for even just the environment in general, because, 1, they use so much water, um, to do that, and then, like, not even to mention, like, about how grass is even not even very good for a lot of places too, like, widespreads of grasses, that's why, like, lawns and stuff are always so unhealthy rather than having, like,
Chris and
clover
I are very
yards.
anti-grass, but we can't, like, get
Yeah.
into the ethics of grass lawns.
But
Otherwise, this we could be here for hours. But
because, I
I
mean
saw those criticisms and it really upset me, so I went on a deep dive, and this was just, like, a hyperfixation, but
mhm,
it really made me mad, and I thought it was really important and relevant to this book to really exemplify that the economic ruling class are, in fact, twisty mustache people, despite there not being, like, built up as characters in this. If he gets this trad published and adds more lore to it and, like, economic, like oh, it could be so good.
well, because
This has the potential of being, like, a five-star book.
I think that's also true too, where, like, even, like, if you because whenever you're getting that, like, Muriel getting bullied by the capitalists and stuff like that, whenever it comes, it's very, like, superficial where you don't even get, like, the reasons why that it's being done or anything like that, because, like, you just get, like, the very surface level takes on it, where I think it needs to be a lot more in depth, where it can talk about, like, the environmental factors that are already going on for, like, the areas that were already affected within this, which is why I do think this book maybe needs, like, another 100 pages, 150 pages for it to be, like, a really solid novel.
It's so close, and I really hope it does someday get there because I think the way he talks about the police and being
Mhm.
bribed and the economic ruling class and really talking about, like, American capitalists specifically because we are, like, the people who are part of, like, the global
Benefiting.
hegemony, right?
Yeah.
Like, we are influencing politics globally here. We are the imperial core. So
Yeah.
it is so important to have that pushback and to acknowledge it as a collective and not just like Donald Trump, but like American capitalists as a whole.
Mhm.
I really appreciate that. And you can see it in his writing. Like he's just so there. And he
Yeah.
talks about like Billy being a working class man. I'm like, man, I tried looking for stuff and all he does is post pictures of his pug. I can't find anything else. So I've been trying to read some of his other books to pick out and see
Well,
if
because,
there's
like,
anything else deeper.
um like, there's a lot of good quotes in this where it's, like, even, like, about, like, the police being corrupt and being paid off and stuff like that. But then there's even, like, the warfare implied, a battle between 2 opposing sides. This was a multi-billion American corporation against one tiny Scottish village. It wasn't warfare, which I think is, like, that's, like, a true quote that even happens to, like, even, like, the Israel-Palestine conflict you look at, because it's just, like, where they're like, "Oh, there's this war going on in Palestine," where it's like, "No, it's not a war. Israel is relentlessly bombing innocent people that have no means to fight back." And that's why it's
Exactly. It's like
warfare.
settler colonial violence.
Yeah. Where
This is
did
crazy.
enjoy the politics of this, which is why, but, like, you look at, like, Babel, which I think, like, comparatively, like, the best political book we've ever read, but you look at how strong those characters are, and even, like, the villains with, like, I don't wanna spoil it too much if you haven't read Babel, but, like, certain characters that, like, end up, like, changing, or, like, not necessarily changing, but you get to see more insight of them and stuff like that, that you didn't get to see in the beginning, that it makes sense for their characterization, and they were still very well-developed characters, even though they were terrible people, and I think that's what this book really
Yeah.
needs, is some very
Because it
strongly
could.
developed characters.
God, it could. I am hoping that one day if he doesn't end up revisiting these, he will just like publish something that is
Else.
just encompasses everything. Because every horror, I mean, I'm on the third one, so like the third one I've read, they're all different topics. He tends to really like horror, but they're different aspects of horror. Like one I read was like an 80s slasher. This one was just like a monster story, and then the one I'm reading right now is a cosmic horror, and they're all very different, and I appreciate that. 'Cause sometimes if I read books by the same author, they
It's just
kind
the
of feel
same
the
thing.
same. Like the
Yeah.
characters feel the same. Like the narratives, their motivations, they feel like copy paste, and I get confused. I'm like, which book am I reading right now?
Mhm.
But this was he's done a really good job, and I think he has a lot of potential, and he can come a long way if he takes into consideration like good faith
Criticism.
criticism.
Yeah.
I
Because
just think
like,
this is
I
I
will
think
say,
this
like,
is a
I
good
did enjoy this. Like, I wanted to like it so much more too. It's just I was getting very frustrated because I could not get attached to the characters at all, and I think that's what makes a book so strong is having such strong characters. That's, like, your main I think most of the like, depending on, like, how strong your plot is, where I don't necessarily think this plot is strong enough to not have strong characters accompanying it, you
Yeah, I
know?
think that's just like the sacrifice of having a book so short is you're also sacrificing your character.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a worthy sacrifice to make. But I think it was funny whenever I told Mariah, like, I was like, "I know why you like this so much because Mariah likes all the monster romances, and this was basically, like, a monster romance."
It was really beautiful. I quite like their romance, and I'm so happy sorry, spoilers. If you're this far, you're already in the
We're
spoiler
already
zone,
in the
but it
spoiler
is
zone.
fade to black. It's fade to black, and
Yeah,
I'm
no smut.
so happy that that was what happened.
What do you think
I
he's
appreciate
packing
that so
down
much. It
there?
was just anything. He's amorphous,
Yeah.
genderless, which I think is really wonderful. That was another thing. It's like this character is also like low key like LGBTQIA, like genderless.
Non-binary, gender fluid.
Which slay, we love that.
Yeah.
Just whatever floats his boat. But let's see if there any other quotes in here that I liked. I just really appreciated all of like the police stuff. That really
Mhm.
cracked me up. I really liked the gore I thought it was really funny
It was
making
funny, yeah. When
the
that
in
guy
place person who was the Donald Trump having like extraordinarily small
oh, penis.
loins.
Yeah. Can we
Yeah.
not say penis?
I don't know. Can
It's a
we?
medical term.
Technically. I
It
was going
is.
more poetic. You were
Oh,
going more clinical.
yeah, clinical.
It works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was silly, and I can appreciate the gore in that way. It's just like I would have been rooting for it more, and I could have like thought it was more fun, like whenever the guy like because obviously he like killed the guy and turned into the guy and then jumped into the ocean as him or whatever. Where I could have like thought this is like more fun if I actually felt like that guy was getting like I felt like he was getting what he deserved, but like I didn't care enough about his character because there
But it
was
wasn't
no
like Joker, like you get what you fucking deserve. It was kind of just like, I mean, he got what he deserved.
yeah. It
I just
wasn't like
wanted more.
compelling.
I needed more violence. It should have
Yeah.
been Muriel should have just gone. I mean, she did.
Yeah.
I want to just empty that clip. That would have been
Okay, I
crazy.
can't put that in, I don't think.
You can. I'm sorry. Anyways,
Anyways.
I thought there was a really nice quote where we can just end it kind of talking about Grant because he's just like a piece of shit since we're already talking about Grant. But he was talking to Muriel and he's like, "Don't you get it? No one gives a shit. No one cares. You're old and you're poor. Society washed its hands of you a long time ago." And I thought that was really indicative of his character, and I wish that we could have got more built on it in that similar vein because that
Yeah,
was just
because,
like that was
like, his
good.
villain monologue, it only works as a villain monologue if he was built up from the beginning. Because, like, no spoilers for, like, Babel or anything like that, but, like, whenever, like, Reginald has his whole, like, spiel at that one point, you, like it's not that you see where he's coming from because you know he's absolutely wrong, but it's like you're more interested in that character because he's been developing you and you're attached to him in the way that Robin is attached to him. And so that's why it almost works that way. While this character you have no attachment to, you don't care about, you're just waiting for him to die, essentially. And it's like,
God, we need another 6-star book to compare.
Notes on an Execution. That one too,
Yeah,
because
Notes
even
on
then,
Execution.
Ansel's perspective was very compelling. I was very interested in what he had to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I had my own personal one. I
Oh.
even had, like,
Well,
Monsanto,
because you
like, the
acted like I was
agricultural
gonna bully
industry.
this whole
That was too
book.
much. I thought you were. I
I
really
just
did.
think the
I was
characters are
scared.
so weak. It's really sad. Like, it's just, that's what makes it, I think, so disappointing. 'Cause it's just like,
I will give you that. Like, there could be more built up, and I'm glad that Chris and I finally have had an opportunity. We've been trying not to discuss the books
yeah,
beforehand, because sometimes let's go on tangents. Like, there's some books we just can't not.
yeah.
But
I feel
lately
like
we've
whenever
had
we were in Babel,
restraint,
we were like,
self-control.
but like, I just, the characterizations are so weak. Because I texted you, I was like, this is kind of lame. Because like, I like
I know, and I
like
was like, what do you mean?
the horror parts I was interested in. Because I even had Tyler read some of them, and he was laughing to like the scene where after like Arthur dies
Right,
or
they're like
whatever.
silly.
Yeah, which I can appreciate that, but then it's just like, which is why I think you'll like the substance, because the body horror in that also very silly and fun. But um but like I could not care. I do not care for the characters at all. And it's really sad because I want to care for the characters. I love characters.
I'm just here for the vibes. I like reading.
I
It's
mean,
my
yeah, I like
hobby.
reading too, but I just like very strong characters that I can get invested into. I think that's what makes me enjoy a book more. Anyways, if that's all we have to say,
Yeah, thanks for listening. The next book that we're going to have come out for the fall season is going to be A Dowry of Blood by, was it S.T. Gibson?
that sounds right to me. Is that really
I
what's
think that's
next?
right. Mm-hmm. We have to get a
Oh,
crack on that. So we're taking a little sidestep from monsters. We're going over to vampire romance. Maybe a
yeah.
little bit tension there.
It's
I don't
sapphic,
know.
isn't it?
No, that's the other one.
No, I'm pretty sure this one's
Something of
sapphic.
Malice.
I think they're both sapphic. I'm pretty sure this is sapphic.
Sapphic September about to pop off, bro.
It's gonna be in
I
October whenever this comes
really
out.
fucking hope. I want to say like a chalice of malice, but it's not a chalice. It's something.
All 4 featured characters are bisexual. So, definitely queer.
Renegade.
Anyways, if that's all we have to say, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Thank you and good night.